Hi, I'm Caris Bello, and I'm head of social media for the recruitment company Fellows and Associates. I'm joined here with the Fellows and Associates director Pete Fellows and the managing consultant Philippa Holland. So today we're going to be talking about the job market in the IP sector and asking a few questions and just having a little discussion. So Pete, what are the current trends and developments you're witnessing in the intellectual property market currently?
So one of the things we have seen post-pandemic is that IP remains very resilient. We are also seeing that across the different technical disciplines, biotechnology has been strong and busy, and it's been very difficult worldwide actually to find candidates. We have clients in not only the UK but also Australia, and they are struggling as much as we are over here. Electronics and engineering are also steady. Private practices are predominantly recruiting across the board, but mostly at associate and senior associate level.
Yeah, Philippa, would you like to add anything to that?
I'd very much agree with what Pete has said. So biotechnology has been very strong. Electronics and engineering has always remained sort of on a steady path. We do have some roles in chemistry and sort of the wider life sciences, but they are sort of more restricted to sort of pockets of firms rather than being across the whole market. And with trademarks as well, there's sort of a few roles that have popped up here and there, but that is very much peaks and troughs. But that has sort of always been the trend with trademarks we've seen.
Okay, so how has the demand then for intellectual property professionals evolved in recent years, do you say? Philippa, would you like to start?
I'd say there sort of pre-pandemic when I first started, there was always a huge demand for sort of electronics and engineering. There always seemed to be a role available for them. It does still remain very much a candidate-led market, especially now, as we've mentioned in biotechnology, it's very strong. We found that probably during the pandemic, a lot of firms did place a recruitment freeze. So there are less attorneys coming through now, sort of at newly qualified level. But we're also seeing quite a demand at partnership as well. So a lot of firms are being more open to recruiting more senior professionals, and more open to looking overseas as well for these types of positions.
Yeah, great. Pete, do you want to add anything to that?
I think we've also noticed post-Brexit that there's more interest in opening offices overseas and more opportunities for UK attorneys to work in other jurisdictions, as well as Philippa mentioned, attorneys moving over to the UK. It's still a mixed picture on that because it is still quite a onerous process sponsoring a overseas applicant. But there are certainly more firms now with sponsor licenses, and I think as more firms begin to do it, that there'll be more opportunities for international candidates as well. I think also we've noticed a bit of a trend towards non-conventional IP roles. So we've recruited IP consultants and strategists. We've noticed former patent attorneys moving into IP strategy roles. And then also we have, for example, recruited for law firms where they've hired patent attorneys to work as patent litigators as an alternative to hiring a solicitor.
So what would you say are some of the key skills and qualifications that employers are now kind of seeking when hiring IP professionals and in the current market we have now?
I think as in the past, one of the areas firms have consistently looked for patent attorneys, and this really hasn't changed, is a patent attorneys who are good with people, who can network and build business. I think firms are conscious that when attorneys qualify, the role becomes more increasingly client facing. So many firms now prioritize people who are comfortable in building relationships with clients. I think at more junior levels, it's still about people who understand and ideally love the technology they're working with. I think that's important. I think also there's perhaps the profession is slowly becoming a little bit more diverse. In the past, a lot of the patent profession has come from a limited number of UK universities, and it's a slow process, but it is certainly getting better. There's more of a spread of backgrounds for candidates.
I know we kind of briefly touched a little bit on it, but Philippa, have you noticed any changes in the types of roles or positions that are in high demand in the intellectual property field?
Very much, as we mentioned, so anything within sort of biotechnology and sort of wider life sciences, as well as electronics and engineering. A lot of the firms would look at most levels, so sort of anything from part qualified up to partnership, as we mentioned. We're also seeing a trend for regional roles increasing as well. So whereas before we'd have just sort of a few smatterings across the regions and then most of the roles would be focused in London,
Yeah.
we're definitely seeing sort of a shift towards, for example, at the moment we have a lot of roles based in Manchester, as well as in Scotland, and sort of across the Midlands as well. So it's very much sort of a time if someone's looking anywhere across the UK, that there should be a position within a firm available.
So would you say, Pete, are there any emerging technologies or areas of innovation that are impacting the intellectual property market at the moment?
There's a lot of stuff around AI. I think we, as a profession, like most professions, people aren't sure yet what impact AI will have. And it's arguably actually had more of an impact on the recruitment sector than the patent sector, but certainly in terms of some of the processes and the more administrative side of the patent process, there are on the corporate side, businesses looking at automating some of that using AI. I don't know, and no one really knows where the impact will be in terms of that going forward.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think, Philippa?
Definitely would agree on AI, as well as sort of standards, patents, and 5G within sort of the telecommunications sector is something that we've seen sort of a trend where they're actually having specific roles and specific teams, particularly for those areas of technology. So they have sort of diversified the fact because there's enough clients to be able to sort of cover that area for them to work specifically in that. So I think those areas in particular, when we speak to clients, those are what they're looking for within patent attorneys that work within electronics.
So, and my last question. So, what challenges, if any, do employers face when sourcing and hiring intellectual property talent at the moment?
Um, I think we're finding sometimes it's marrying expectation versus reality. That some firms, if they haven't recruited in a particular area for a while, will go into it with lots of expectations and then realize that there simply isn't the supply in that area. I think firms that go into a recruitment project with an amount of flexibility are more likely to be successful more quickly. And I think it's important to think around the parameters, because if you say no to candidates too early, you may miss someone who then goes to another firm who would have been the best option for the job on the market. And then secondly, I think flexible and hybrid working is still important. I would say in private practice, it's largely settled on 2 to 3 days in the office. So I think for the most part, for private practices, as long as you are offering that with flexibility around the edges, you're probably okay. But I would also encourage firms to consider people who want more remote working options, because some of those candidates can be excellent, and if you can make it work, it opens another opportunity.
Yeah. What do you think, Philippa?
Yeah, I definitely think there needs to be an openness sort of on the firm side in terms of when they're looking at candidates, and realizing that if they advertise for a role, they're not necessarily going to get 4, 5, 6 amazing applications. It is very much, as I mentioned, a candidate-led market, and there may only be one candidate available, or sometimes for weeks or months there may be no candidates available. So it's realizing that there needs to be an openness and a flexibility in
Yeah.
terms of what they're looking for, and maybe looking for something a little bit different than what they originally sort of have as the specification. Um, and then just touching on the hybrid working as well, it is sort of very important to the candidates that we speak to, but making sure that there is that saying that there could be a possibility of having more days in the office. I think for some people that we've spoken to, that there is the assumption that flexible working is the norm and they need to only be in the office a couple of days, but especially at sort of trainee or newly qualified level, some attorneys that we speak to actually prefer to be in the office more, so that they can have that interaction and that face-to-face sort of working environment, as opposed to sort of being at home. So just having an open conversation and being able to say 2 to 3 days may be the norm, but if you want to be in 5 days, we can make that work. Or as Pete said, if you want 100% remote working, that really does open the doors to finding some great candidates that might not necessarily be within a commutable distance.
Thank you very much for speaking with me. I hope people can take some insightful information from that. And yeah, so thank you very much. That's it from us at Fellows and Associates. Bye.